Hello all, this is Six-Path Weeb. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's fanfic topic explores a bold reimagining of the Naruto universe. What if Tobirama's spirit lived in Naruko? A question that opens the door to complex dynamics, untapped potential, and a fusion of old-world strategy with modern resolve. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is intended for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's begin. It was a bright, sunny day in Konohagakure, and one Uzumaki Naruko, the cheerful young girl known as the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, now 9 years old, was dashing through the village's main streets with boundless energy. Though many villagers glanced her way with uncertain expressions, Naruko paid them no mind. She had grown used to it long ago and believed that her harmless pranks were likely the reason. Despite that, a big smile was spread across her face. She had just returned from visiting a beautiful waterfall near one of the training grounds. The peaceful sight was fresh in her mind as she entered the Hokage's administrative building. Naruko ignored the surprised looks from those inside as she zoomed down the hallways, barely missing a tall man with silver hair that pointed skyward. She managed to swerve around him just in time, and the jounin turned briefly to glance at her retreating figure, smiling softly before continuing on his way. Ever since she was 7 years old, Naruko loved exploring the hidden corners of her village. The Sandaime Hokage had once told her that before the village was founded, the whole area was one vast forest filled with caves and waterfalls. Every time she discovered something new, she would run to the Hokage to describe it in vivid detail. The warmth of the Hokage's smile was something she always looked forward to. Bursting into the office, Naruko ignored the gentle protest from the Hokage's secretary, which immediately put the nearby Onbu on alert. But Hiruzen Sarutobi simply smiled, already familiar with the girl's lively personality, especially when she came to share her latest discovery. "Naruko-chan, how many times have I told you not to barge in like that?" he said with a gentle sigh. "Sorry, Gigi. I just found another waterfall today, and it's even more amazing than the last one," she exclaimed, eyes shining. Hiruzen chuckled at her enthusiasm. When he had taken her in from the orphanage, he had worried about how she would adjust. His hope had always been for her to have a childhood filled with joy and adventure. Though she hadn't made many friends yet, her fascination with the village's natural beauty brought her comfort, and it certainly helped that her usual pranks had slowed down, which meant less paperwork for him. He listened carefully as she described the location with a mix of excitement and big words that she almost, but not quite, used correctly. When she finished, Hiruzen smiled warmly. "That does sound like a beautiful place, Naruko-chan." Her face lit up even more at his approval. "However, I do believe you're supposed to be at the academy right now." As expected, Naruko's bright expression quickly turned into a small frown. "But Gigi, it's so boring there. We just listen to Iruka-sensei talk and talk." Hiruzen released a patient sigh. This wasn't the first time she had said something like that. He decided it was time to try a new approach, one that might reach her more deeply. "Naruko-chan," he said gently, "if you truly want to become Hokage one day, like you always say, then learning at the academy is an important first step. Everything you learn there forms the foundation for what comes next. Once you know the basics well, it becomes much easier to grow stronger and more skilled." Naruko looked up at him, giving her full attention. She respected the old man deeply and always listened to him. "It might not seem fun now, but the knowledge you gain will give you a big advantage in the future. Believe me," he said with a warm smile. "Do you understand?" She nodded, though her expression turned a bit downcast. Noticing this, Hiruzen gently raised her chin so their eyes could meet. "You don't need to feel sad, Naruko-chan. I believe in you. All I ask is that you try your best. That's all." Naruko's frown faded, replaced with a determined smile. "I will try, Gigi. Just you wait, I'll be the best student at the academy and make you proud." Hiruzen beamed, placing a kind hand on her head and gently ruffling her hair. "You already make me proud, Naruko-chan. Now go on. And don't worry, I'll tell Iruka-sensei you weren't feeling well today. Head home and think about what we talked about." With a nod and a bright, "Thank you, Gigi," Naruko turned and ran toward the door, full of renewed motivation. Hiruzen watched her leave, wondering if his words had truly reached her. She certainly had her mother's spirited nature, without a doubt. But Hiruzen also saw traces of her father's strong will and bright spirit. Those vivid blue eyes and sunny hair weren't her only inheritance, they were just the beginning. No sooner had the girl left the Hokage's office than she made her way straight to a secluded training ground she knew was rarely used. It was conveniently located near her apartment, and she could see it clearly from her window. Naruko had always been fascinated by incredible ninja techniques, but she never got the chance to watch any in action at this place. Still, recalling what she had learned at the academy, she decided to follow a self-made training routine. As Iruka-sensei had always emphasized, stretching before physical activity was important, so Naruko began with a warm-up, a few laps around the field, followed by sit-ups and push-ups. Once her body was ready, she moved on to practicing the katas she had been taught at the academy. The training grounds didn't have proper targets, so she used the trees instead. At first, it was uncomfortable to strike them, but Naruko pressed on, determined and focused. She kept thinking about the kind and encouraging words the Hokage had shared with her earlier that day. For some reason she couldn't quite explain, people at the academy often pointed at her and laughed when she practiced. Whenever she asked what was funny, the response was usually just more giggling or being told to try harder. Even though it bothered her, she kept going, hitting the tree again and again. She tried not to think about the soreness in her hands. When the discomfort grew too strong, she finally sat down to rest. Figuring she had done enough taijutsu for now, Naruko turned her attention to chakra control exercises. Iruka-sensei always told her how important those were for developing stronger ninjutsu. She plucked a leaf from a nearby tree and placed it on her forehead. While this might be simple for others with smaller chakra reserves, Naruko had more chakra than most kids her age. As a result, it required a lot more concentration, and soon, beads of sweat began to run down her face as she struggled to keep the leaf in place. No one had ever explained to her why it was harder for her than for others. All she was told was that she must be doing it wrong. Despite her best efforts, the leaf fell off again, and she let out a soft sigh of frustration. The same thing happened when she tried the basic ninjutsu techniques they had learned. She could manage the transformation and substitution techniques after some effort, but the clone technique continued to challenge her. She groaned in disappointment as she looked at the result, another faded, weak clone. Throughout the day she practiced and tried to improve, but the outcome was always the same. Eventually, even her chakra reserves became too drained, and she fainted on the soft grass of the training field. 3 hours later. When Naruko opened her eyes again, the sky was dark. She let out a sigh at her own carelessness and sat up slowly. Reflecting on her earlier training, she felt disheartened. It didn't seem like she had made any progress at all. Her movements still felt the same as they did back at the academy. If Mizuki-sensei were there, he would probably say the same thing. With a soft kick of a pebble and a slight pout, she began walking back toward her apartment. As she passed through the quiet streets, a strange sound caught her attention, one she hadn't noticed before. It reminded her of the waterfalls she enjoyed discovering around the village. But there weren't any waterfalls near her home. Were there? Curious, Naruko followed the sound, moving past her apartment and into the forest behind it. After about 10 minutes of walking, she found a small cave entrance, mostly hidden from view. A spark of excitement lit her eyes. She had found something new. She stepped inside carefully. The cave was dim, with just enough light to guide her steps. The sound of rushing water echoed through the narrow path. When the tunnel opened up, Naruko's eyes widened in awe. A gentle waterfall flowed into a crystal-clear lake, and she could see straight through the water to the bottom. It was a peaceful and beautiful sight. Drawn in by the mysterious calm, Naruko walked closer to the water. As she explored the area, her eyes landed on something unusual, a rock that stood out from the others. There was a strange marking on it, one she couldn't recognize in the low light. As she reached out to touch it, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath her shifted. With a startled cry, Naruko felt herself fall as a small ledge opened beneath her. Her voice echoed through the cave, but no one was around to hear her. She bumped her head slightly, and her vision faded into darkness. When she opened her eyes again, she realized she was no longer in the same cave. This place looked similar, but now the walls were lit by soft torchlight. The strange markings from before were everywhere, glowing faintly. She sat up and looked around, only to freeze in surprise. She wasn't alone. Who are you? Naruko asked, her voice shaking a little as she stared at the tall figure before her. He had fair skin, white shaggy hair, and wore dark blue armor. His forehead protector had the symbol of Konohagakure, though it looked different from the ones people wore today. The man crossed his arms, his expression serious, and his gaze intense. I could ask you the same thing, young one. How did you find this place? Feeling nervous under his stern eyes, Naruko replied, My name is Uzumaki Naruko. I was exploring a cave when I touched a stone with a marking. A ledge opened, and I fell. When I woke up, I was here. The man studied her closely but sensed no deception. The energy signature that had activated the seal matched hers, confirming her story. His expression softened slightly, the tension in the room easing. Naruko took a deep breath as the atmosphere calmed. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this man was familiar. She looked at him again, trying to place where she had seen his face before. Then it hit her, she had seen his image many times. She saw it almost every day. Her eyes widened, and she pointed at him with a shaky hand. "Are you a ghost?" she asked hesitantly. The man before her was none other than the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. But that couldn't be possible. Could it? "That's a rather unusual question, young one. But to answer, my name is Senju Tobirama, known as the second Hokage of Konohagakure," the Nidaime began calmly. He was about to continue when Naruko interrupted. "How can you be here talking to me? I thought you passed away," Naruko exclaimed, quickly covering her mouth, startled by her own outburst as she caught the stern expression on the man's face. "You would do well not to interrupt me again, child. I don't enjoy repeating myself." Naruko nodded quickly, intimidated by the commanding tone. "As I was saying," Tobirama continued, "my name is Senju Tobirama. What you see before you is merely a preserved essence of my original self. Anticipating the possibility of my absence during a time of great conflict, I sealed a portion of my chakra here in hopes that someone from Konoha, preferably one of my students, would discover this place, where we used to train together. My goal was to pass on the knowledge I've accumulated." Tobirama studied the young girl before him, sensing her chakra signature. She had introduced herself as Uzumaki Naruko. He verified her identity with his sensory skills and noticed a familiar energy deep within her, one that reminded him of his sister-in-law, Mito Uzumaki, wife of his elder brother Hashirama. Tobirama's analytical mind quickly estimated how much time had passed since his last moments. Naruko listened attentively but found it difficult to fully understand. Her confused expression showed she was still trying to grasp everything. "Are you a spirit, then?" she asked timidly. "No, I am not," Tobirama replied firmly. "Now, tell me, how many years have passed since I was last active?" "I'm not sure. Maybe 50 years? Give or take a few. History was never my strong subject," Naruko admitted sheepishly. Tobirama simply gave a thoughtful nod and placed 2 fingers on the ground, closing his eyes as he extended his sensory technique. He absorbed an immense amount of information instantly. As he scanned the chakra around Konoha, his expression darkened slightly when he detected no traces of the Senju clan. However, he sensed several Uchiha signatures, which made him frown, his thoughts unreadable. Among those energies, he recognized a familiar presence, Hiruzen Sarutobi, though it had grown faint with age. He must be nearing 70 now, Tobirama surmised. He also sensed Shimura Danzo and another chakra that resembled Uchiha Kagami's, likely a descendant. Tobirama had always taken pride in training capable shinobi. As he observed Naruko, he felt a sudden drop in the room's atmosphere, something that startled her. Naruko stepped back in fear, accidentally nudging a small stone that echoed in the silence. Tobirama's eyes immediately locked onto hers, causing her to freeze under the intensity of his gaze. However, Tobirama began to study her more closely. Though he had hoped one of his students would receive his teachings, this young kunoichi before him showed potential. Her chakra reserves were remarkable, even comparable to his own when he was younger. Combined with the presence of the Nine Tails energy inside her, Tobirama realized she could indeed become someone worthy of inheriting his legacy. Meanwhile, Naruko questioned the reality of the situation. Had she imagined it all after falling and hitting her head? Could she really be sitting inside a hidden chamber, speaking with the preserved essence of a legendary Hokage? "Tell me, young one," Tobirama said suddenly, causing Naruko to jump in surprise. "The reason I remain here is to pass on my knowledge to ensure Konoha's future strength. Since you were the one to discover this place, I have decided to entrust you with everything I know." Naruko's eyes widened in amazement, but then she hesitated. "Wait. This all feels too strange. One moment I fall. Then I'm suddenly here, talking to someone from history. Is this real?" Tobirama observed as Naruko pulled at her hair in confusion. He found the scene oddly amusing and allowed himself a rare, subtle smirk. "My presence has already been explained. Additionally, the human mind cannot fabricate entirely new experiences. You would not be able to conjure up details of what I've shared, especially not the techniques or knowledge I am about to give you." Naruko blinked, slowly coming to terms with the logic. "Now," Tobirama continued, "if you are to train under me, I need to know everything about your life, your strengths, your current abilities, and your struggles. Do not hide anything. I will be able to sense the truth." Naruko flinched slightly at the weight behind his words but obeyed, sitting down to share her story. As she spoke, Tobirama listened intently. His expressions remained composed, only changing slightly, his eyebrows lifting occasionally or frowning in response to certain parts of her tale. Naruko spoke of her lonely childhood, how people in the village often avoided her or treated her unfairly. She never understood why. Tobirama, however, had a strong suspicion. He remembered how his sister-in-law had been treated with caution due to her role as a Jinchuriki. In Naruko's case, the treatment seemed even more isolating. When she mentioned that Lord Hiruzen had done what he could but was not always there, Tobirama frowned. The old Hokage must have had his reasons, though age might have dulled his effectiveness. "So, that's about it for my life. As for skills," Naruko sighed. "I'm still in the academy, but honestly, I don't feel like I'm good at anything." Tobirama raised an eyebrow. "My chakra control is really poor. I can't do the taijutsu drills properly, my kunai and shuriken never land where I want them to, genjutsu makes no sense, and I've never been able to perform the basic ninjutsu well. My teachers say I mess everything up, but they never explain what I'm doing wrong," she added with frustration. Tobirama nodded slightly. From what she said, it aligned with what he had already sensed. If the village treated her with distance, the teachers likely offered her little support as well. "I understand," he said thoughtfully. Naruko glanced at him, slightly breathless. Despite her outburst, she felt heard, perhaps for the first time. Tobirama took a deep breath and looked at her directly. "Since our goal is to focus on developing you as a shinobi, I will now provide the guidance your teachers have not. First, understand this, the larger your chakra reserves, the harder it becomes to control them. Genjutsu and low-level ninjutsu require delicate chakra manipulation. That's why you've been struggling." Naruko blinked in realization. "I will train you to improve your control, along with your taijutsu and tool-throwing skills. With proper dedication, I can help you master these within 3 months. During that time, we will also cover strategy, stealth, and basic shinobi principles. After that, I will begin teaching you my personal techniques." Naruko stared at him in amazement. "You really believe I can do it, Sensei?" Tobirama smirked slightly. "I speak only what is logical and true. I would not make the offer if I believed otherwise." Naruko nodded, smiling. "Okay. When do we start?" "Tomorrow, after your academy classes, you will return here and we will begin. But there's something important we must handle first," Tobirama said, his tone turning serious. "This seal was designed to preserve my chakra only temporarily. In order to remain here and teach you, I require a steady supply of chakra." "That's all? You could have just said so," Naruko giggled. "But won't I need my chakra for training?" "You won't need all of it," Tobirama replied. "Only a small portion each day, enough to maintain this space and continue our work." "That sounds good to me," Naruko said with excitement. She had finally found someone who believed in her. With the guidance of the second Hokage himself, she was ready to begin her journey, to grow stronger, not just for herself, but for the village she loved. When Naruko awakened the next morning, she briefly believed everything that happened the night before had been a dream. After all, she had spoken with someone who, by all accounts, shouldn't have been around for decades. Still, the conversation remained vivid in her mind, especially the part where the man claiming to be the second Hokage explained that her large chakra capacity might be the reason why she struggled with the academy's basic techniques. That single idea gave Naruko a spark of hope. If it were real, then maybe there was a reason things had been so difficult for her. She began her day like usual, with a warm bowl of ramen. After getting dressed, she rushed through her morning routine and headed out. The academy was typical that day. Iruka-sensei was focused on the lecture, and Naruko, as usual, found herself stumbling through the lessons. Though Iruka looked at her with concern from time to time, he didn't step in to help directly. Naruko thought about mentioning her chakra struggles to Iruka but decided against it. It wasn't that she didn't like him, he was one of the few people who treated her kindly, but for reasons she couldn't fully explain, she didn't feel ready to share everything. Telling someone she'd spoken with the second Hokage might sound like she was making things up. So she endured another day at the academy, and as soon as the final bell rang, she darted off with determination. Soon, she reached the hidden location from the day before. A joyful smile spread across her face as she heard the familiar rush of the waterfall inside the cave. As she entered the cavern, she was surprised, and delighted, to see the second Hokage once again, calmly seated on the surface of the lagoon with his eyes closed in quiet meditation. The moment she stepped in, his eyes opened, and he looked directly at her. The sheer focus in his gaze made Naruko freeze on the spot. He stood and walked toward her. "Now that you're here, we shall begin." Naruko gave a quiet nod, her earlier confidence giving way to nervous anticipation. "As you mentioned yesterday, you need training in several areas: chakra control, shuriken techniques, physical skills, ninjutsu, and illusion arts," he said evenly. Naruko looked down in embarrassment but nodded again. "There is no shame in not knowing," the second Hokage said with a gentle but firm tone. "You told me no one has properly taught you. That's not your failure, that's a gap in your education." Naruko blinked, unsure how to respond. "In simpler terms," he added, "your struggles are due to lack of guidance, not lack of talent." "Oh. Yeah, well, you could have just said that from the start, sensei," Naruko replied with a childlike pout. He ignored the comment. "As I said yesterday, we'll need about 3 months to cover the basics. Time is valuable, so let's get started. First, can you explain what chakra is?" It's the energy we use for ninjutsu, right?" The Hokage waited for more, but when Naruko didn't continue, he sighed and began the lesson. "That's part of it. Chakra is essential to every ninja technique. It comes from combining the physical energy found in every cell of your body with the mental energy that grows through experience and training. You don't need to memorize that right away, we'll go over it as we train." Naruko nodded, visibly more at ease. "It's important to understand how chakra works in practice. Ninjutsu generally requires more physical energy, while illusion-based techniques draw more from mental focus. Today, we'll begin with chakra control." Naruko's eyes lit up, until he continued. "There are several exercises to improve chakra control. The leaf balancing method is common, but given your chakra levels, it likely won't help much. So that's why I kept burning the leaf every time." She huffed, puffing her cheeks. "Why didn't Iruka-sensei tell me that?" "That's exactly why we'll skip that and move to a more intensive method, tree climbing." Naruko looked confused until she saw him calmly walk up the side of the cave wall as if it were the floor. "To do this," he explained, "focus chakra to the soles of your feet using the ram hand sign. If the chakra is too little, you'll slip. If it's too much, the surface won't hold. Balance is the key." He looked down at her. "With your chakra levels, it might take a week to master, but once you do, controlling chakra for other techniques will become much easier. Now try it." Naruko formed the hand sign, her feet glowing slightly with blue energy. She took a few steps, then the surface beneath her feet cracked, and she fell into the water with a splash. "You used too much chakra. Try again." She tried again, this time barely taking a step before slipping. For the next 2 hours, she tried repeatedly, making slow progress. She managed to climb about 10 steps up the wall before sliding back down. "We'll come back to this later," he finally said. "Practice it as often as you can, even at home. For now, let's shift focus to shuriken training." Naruko perked up. "Take a few and throw them at me." She blinked. "Wait, won't that hurt you, sensei? Don't we have a target board or something?" The second Hokage raised an eyebrow. "If you can land a hit on me, then I wasn't much of a Hokage, was I? Now, throw." Naruko hesitated but followed the instruction. She threw 4 shuriken, none of them even close. The Hokage crossed his arms, analyzing her form. He noticed that while she used her right hand properly, her wrist was too stiff. He stood beside her and gently corrected her posture. "You need a smoother motion from the wrist." She tried again, and this time, her aim improved slightly. "Practice until it becomes second nature," he said. "Even if your wrist gets tired, don't give up." Naruko nodded, her eyes bright with determination. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, she felt like someone truly believed in her potential. Before, Naruko would often get frustrated like a child when she missed her mark. But now, things had changed. She had begun to understand what was holding her back, and she practiced with dedication and focus. Tobirama observed the young girl steadily throwing her shuriken, her brow furrowed in concentration. He could tell she had potential. Sometimes, it only took one piece of advice to spark improvement. Tobirama expected that by the end of the day, Naruko might be able to aim the shuriken with precision. Still, today's goal wasn't about accuracy alone, it was about understanding the broader skills he intended to teach her. Even if she managed to hit the target, the training would continue, striving for polished execution. This was the same method he once used to train Hiruzen and others, with proven results. After 2 hours of practice, Naruko winced slightly after a final throw, signaling the end of their current exercise. What she hadn't yet shared was how much effort she had put into mastering hand signs. It was essential that she perform them correctly. Even a small mistake could affect the technique. "Naruko, do you know all 12 hand signs?" Tobirama asked. The girl looked up and hesitated, her fingers fidgeting slightly with a hint of nervousness. "Yeah, I do. But I take too long to go through them. My teachers told me I wouldn't be a good shinobi because of that." Of course they did, Tobirama thought to himself with a slight sigh. You understand that hand signs are used to perform many ninjutsu and genjutsu techniques. Through hand seals, you control your chakra with precision, which is why each sequence must be executed flawlessly. We'll be working on different sequences throughout our training. I'll start with 2 hand combinations and increase difficulty as you improve. Understood? Naruko nodded with a small smile, earning a nod from Tobirama and a confident, encouraging grin. Naruko definitely had energy to spare. Now, let's move on. Our next subject is taijutsu. I'll be teaching you my personal style. It emphasizes agility, precise movements, and well-timed strikes. We'll also include physical conditioning to prepare your body accordingly. Naruko noticed Tobirama's smile shift into something more intense, perhaps even mischievous. She gave a small gulp, uncertain of what lay ahead. As night fell, Tobirama looked at the young girl lying on the ground, completely worn out from the day's training. Despite her fatigue, there was a look of pure satisfaction on her face, and Tobirama couldn't help but smile. "You look like you're enjoying yourself, huh?" he said, amused. "A bit. I guess," Naruko replied, catching her breath with a soft laugh. Tobirama's tone then turned serious. "I need to explain something important, so listen carefully." Naruko slowly sat up, still tired but eager to understand. "We're going to work on areas where you've been held back. Eventually, others will begin to notice how much you're improving." Naruko smiled proudly, but Tobirama remained firm. "If people have been unfair to you, they might become suspicious when you begin to shine. That's why you shouldn't reveal everything you learn here. Show just enough progress to remain steady in your class, but keep your true abilities reserved." Naruko tilted her head in confusion. "But I want them to see that I'm capable too." Tobirama's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in emphasis. "You're training to be a shinobi, not an entertainer. You never show everything you can do unless absolutely necessary. The more you keep hidden, the more prepared you'll be in real situations. It gives you the advantage." He spoke with a calm but commanding tone, arms crossed, as Naruko absorbed every word. She imagined the Hokage speaking the same way, though he never had, at least not to her. "Do you understand?" he asked. Naruko nodded, although reluctantly. She wanted to show her progress, but even she could tell Tobirama had already helped more in one day than the academy had in years. "Good. Now go home and rest. Tomorrow, we'll start again, and keep going until you master everything." Naruko, sore from head to toe, turned to leave, walking with a limp. Thankfully, the training area was close to her apartment. Otherwise, she might have collapsed right then and there. Her whole body ached in places she hadn't known could ache. Yet despite that, a warm sense of accomplishment filled her heart. Just one day under Tobirama's guidance had made a difference, and she could only imagine how far she would go from here. 3 months later. Again, Tobirama instructed calmly, pointing out a small mistake in one of the taijutsu forms Naruko performed. Her clothes were worn from constant training, and her face glistened with sweat. Still, Naruko showed no sign of slowing down. She continued to push herself with determination and a bright, confident smile. "You can rest now." She nodded gratefully and walked over to the calm lagoon nearby, splashing her face with cool water. "As I mentioned when we began, in these 3 months we've corrected many of your initial errors. Your shurikenjutsu has reached a level suitable for a Jinan, and you've successfully completed the next chakra control exercise, walking on water. With this, you've performed all 3 essential academy-level ninjutsu. Although, I must say, my older brother would be deeply concerned about how much the standards have declined over time." During their training, Naruko had come to learn a great deal about the man known as the second Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. When she explained the current academy graduation requirements, Tobirama was astonished. He remarked that when the academy was first founded, expectations were far more demanding. He also made it clear that he valued excellence. He only accepted her progress when she completed techniques to his exact standards, otherwise, she had to keep practicing. Your taijutsu has improved significantly from what it was 3 months ago. Naruko nodded, smiling brightly. Tobirama had kept his promise and had guided her every step of the way. Thank you so much, Tobirama-sensei. The elder ninja gave a small nod of approval and smiled in return. Your practical abilities have developed well enough for us to move forward with more advanced training. But first, I'd like to know how you're doing with your other subjects. Over the past months, whenever Naruko was too exhausted for physical training, Tobirama would focus on her academic skills instead. At first, she protested, but Tobirama had explained that chakra is a combination of physical and mental energy, and both must be nurtured. As a result, Naruko had spent time studying history, geography, strategy, and more. While Tobirama couldn't teach her about the more recent Hokage due to the time he came from, Naruko's understanding of older history and foundational concepts improved, much to the satisfaction of the third Hokage. Her efforts had raised her standing in the academy, and she now ranked in the middle of her class. I'm somewhere in the middle now. I'm still working on my academics, but I'm getting better at taijutsu, ninjutsu, and shurikenjutsu. She trailed off slightly, though I haven't shown all of it yet, like you said. Are you keeping an eye on your teachers and classmates as instructed? Tobirama asked. Naruko nodded, remembering his advice. He taught her how to observe her surroundings carefully without drawing attention. It had been difficult for her at first, she was naturally energetic and expressive. But with effort and guidance, she had learned to control her presence and sharpen her focus. Mizuki-sensei seems like he really doesn't like me. Iruka-sensei seems pleased with how much I've improved. The rest are about the same. Sasuke is still acting like he's above everyone else. Tobirama wasn't surprised. He had noted that members of the Uchiha clan often carried a strong sense of pride, especially regarding their abilities. He recalled sensing something unusual one day, a sharp change involving the Uchiha clan. Although 2 Uchiha chakra signatures remained, the rest had faded. He couldn't help but suspect that the decision involving the clan had larger implications, though he kept such thoughts to himself. Now that your chakra and physical foundations are solid, we'll shift focus to chakra refinement, Tobirama continued. As I've told you many times, chakra is a blend of physical and mental energy. You've learned to shape chakra using hand seals to perform ninjutsu and genjutsu, but there's much more to explore. We'll now work on advanced chakra control, improve your taijutsu further, refine your ninjutsu, and start training to resist illusions. Naruko looked puzzled. Why more chakra control? I thought walking on water was the final step. And why can't I learn genjutsu techniques? Tobirama frowned slightly, not out of anger, but as a sign of thinking. At first, Naruko had mistaken it as frustration, but she had learned that it usually meant he was considering how to best explain something. I never said water walking was the last step. There are 2 more levels. The next exercise is called the kunai hovering technique. You'll channel your chakra through your hand and lift a kunai using only your chakra. I'll explain it in detail, so don't look so worried, it's not as scary as it sounds. Naruko straightened up, listening carefully. The final chakra control exercise is typically reserved for medical nin and genjutsu experts, where control must be perfect. Since you're not aiming to become either, we'll focus your efforts elsewhere. As for your second question, your current chakra capacity and control make it difficult to use genjutsu effectively. However, learning to identify and break free from illusions is absolutely essential. Shinobi with high chakra reserves often have a harder time resisting genjutsu. Naruko thought deeply, her face showing curiosity. What is it? Tobirama asked, sensing she had something on her mind. When you said that people with a lot of chakra are more vulnerable to genjutsu, I remembered something. One time, Iruka-sensei said I got a question completely wrong, something about the third Hokage. But I thought I answered it correctly. I ended up writing about the countries that border the land of fire. I really believed it was the right answer. Tobirama frowned, pondering the situation. He considered the possibility that someone may have influenced what Naruko saw, perhaps even placing her under a simple illusion. This wasn't something a teacher should do, and it raised troubling questions. As I've said, genjutsu is the art of creating illusions, not just visuals, but convincing someone they're experiencing something that isn't real. It's done by disrupting the target's chakra flow. It's possible that someone created a minor illusion that altered what you saw on the paper. Naruko's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe someone at the academy would do that, especially not Iruka-sensei. Maybe Mizuki-sensei? Don't dwell on it, Tobirama said firmly. You couldn't have known. You're still a student, and your job right now is to learn and grow. Naruko nodded, taking the advice to heart. Now, as for ninjutsu, I'll begin teaching you a few techniques that will serve you well in the future. But keep in mind, being skilled at ninjutsu doesn't mean using flashy moves all the time. There are important things to consider during a battle. First is your surroundings. If you're in a tight space, using wide-range techniques isn't smart. Second is your chakra reserves, you must always know how much chakra each technique requires. And third, precision. No opponent will stand still and wait for your move, so accuracy and timing are key. Naruko giggled at the way he said that last part. Tobirama had a unique sense of humor. You'll need techniques that suit your fighting style. Learning things you'll never use in battle is a waste of time and energy. What about elemental ninjutsu? Naruko asked eagerly. Tobirama couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. That comes later. First, we'll strengthen your chakra control and teach you how to apply what you've learned in real situations. Once you've mastered the basics, we'll begin working with elemental techniques. No student of mine will attempt anything beyond their current level of mastery. Naruko nodded again, focused and ready. She resumed her taijutsu practice, knowing that the next stage of her training would begin the very next day. Next day. Following Tobirama's guidance, Naruko made a small change to her outfit. Nothing too noticeable, as attracting attention was not part of the plan. Instead of her usual orange jumpsuit, she wore the pants with a brown t-shirt. The bright orange color still peeked through, but no one seemed to pay it much attention. As usual, the young kunoichi attended the academy and went through her daily training routines, though slightly under her true capabilities. To most, Naruko appeared just the same as always, but the keen eyes of a certain member of the Nara clan noticed something different. Shikamaru Nara, despite his laid-back attitude, had sharp instincts. About a month ago, he had begun observing a subtle shift in Naruko's behavior. Others barely noticed, but Shikamaru wasn't convinced that it was just natural growth. Naruko had always been ranked lowest in the class, not showing much proficiency in basic skills. Yet lately, she was lasting longer during taijutsu matches, landing more accurate hits with shuriken and kunai, and even performing slightly better in written assessments. These improvements were small, intentionally so, but they didn't escape Shikamaru's attention. Shikamaru's father often reminded him that Nara clan members had sharp minds and that he should trust his instincts. After a few weeks of watching Naruko's progress, Shikamaru became convinced Naruko was far more capable than she let on. He himself put in only the minimum effort needed to pass, but he didn't expect that the class clown would be hiding her true abilities in a similar way. Today was another example. While others laughed as Naruko deliberately missed a few targets, Shikamaru noticed how she had carefully thrown just off mark. Usually, she'd react loudly, shouting her dreams of becoming Hokage. But today, she just shrugged and quietly returned to her spot, a small and content smile on her face. That confirmed it, something was definitely up. During the break, Shikamaru tried to find her. Without her usual bright outfit, it proved a bit more difficult. Still, his curiosity only grew. He gave up the search when Kuji invited him to share some snacks, and the two sat down to chat. Meanwhile, on the academy rooftop, Naruko sat quietly, gazing over the hidden leaf village and the forests beyond. She wasn't up there to avoid anyone in particular, though she had noticed Shikamaru paying more attention to her lately. Tobirama-sensei had warned her to be cautious around the Nara clan due to their sharp observational skills. Still, today, she simply wanted to enjoy the view. From the rooftop, she could spot the quick movements of shinobi across buildings. Tobirama's training had sharpened her senses, and she could now track their paths with surprising ease. She envied their skill and silently dreamed of advancing, first to Jinan, then Chunin, then Jonin. She hadn't given up on her dream of becoming Hokage. In fact, her dream was more focused now. Tobirama had explained that a Hokage needs strength, wisdom, and experience. To lead the village, one had to rise through the ranks and gain the trust of even the most skilled shinobi. It wouldn't happen overnight. One step at a time, they had agreed. After school, as always, Naruko made her way to the training area to meet Tobirama-sensei. The other students watched her leave with some curiosity. The pranks had stopped weeks ago, and most people were happy about it, though a few still wondered what the once loud girl was doing after class. Inside the cave. The moment Naruko stepped into the training area, she was met by swift streams of water. Narrowing her eyes, she quickly focused her chakra through her feet and dodged the attacks with agility. A kunai appeared in her hand, her reflexes had clearly improved. As she adjusted her stance, another wave of water surged at her from the side. She leapt clear just in time and landed to find Tobirama standing with his arms crossed. "If I were your opponent, that could have been a critical mistake," he said firmly. Naruko gave a small nod, accepting the lesson. Can you explain what just happened? Naruko tilted her head, unsure. As I mentioned yesterday, a shinobi who specializes in ninjutsu must learn how to control the battlefield. I used specific water techniques to guide you right where I wanted. That's how one gains the advantage. In this next phase of your training, I'll teach you how to do just that. Naruko nodded, eyes gleaming with determination. Let's begin. At the Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sighed as he rubbed his wrist, worn out from the mountain of paperwork. He needed a break, tea and his pipe weren't cutting it anymore. Lately, he had been thinking a lot about the future, especially about finding a suitable successor. He decided to check in on Naruko using his observation orb. Iruka had recently reported her gradual improvement, which was encouraging. Their last conversation was 3 months ago, and Hiruzen realized he missed seeing her around. Oddly, it was taking longer than expected to find her location through the orb. That wasn't usual. She hadn't missed a single class, so she hadn't gone anywhere far. Still, something felt off. Hiruzen eventually set the orb aside when his old teammates and advisors arrived for a meeting. He planned to visit the academy himself the next day. Unbeknownst to Hiruzen, Tobirama, aware of how the orb worked, had trained Naruko in methods to avoid detection. Back at training. Naruko's next task was chakra control. The exercise involved levitating a kunai using only chakra from her palm. It was harder than it looked. Too much chakra, and the kunai flew off. Too little, and it wouldn't lift. As expected, Naruko often used too much chakra, sending the kunai flying. The first few times were almost comical, her startled reactions echoing through the cave. But she kept trying. By the end of the session, she managed to keep the kunai hovering for about 2 seconds. Tobirama set short and long-term goals, 1 minute, then 10 minutes. This level of control takes time, he reminded her. Next, let's move to ninjutsu techniques that will be useful. Even though she was tired, Naruko smiled with excitement. The first technique improves agility, Shunshine, the body flicker technique. It allows short to long-range high-speed movement. Perfect for taijutsu. Naruko was already eager to learn. Next is Fukumi Hari, the hidden needle technique. You can launch needles from your mouth, catching your opponent off guard. Naruko made a face, but Tobirama continued. The third technique is Doku Giri, the poison mist technique. You release a mist to disorient multiple opponents or create an opening to retreat. The needles are a bit much, but I'll try everything, Tobirama-sensei, she declared. Tobirama gave a faint smile. There's another jutsu I invented, Cage Bunshine, the shadow clone technique. Unlike the basic clone technique, this one creates a real, solid copy of you. It requires more chakra, but it comes with a major benefit. Whatever the clone learns, you learn too. Understand the value? Naruko's eyes lit up. With that technique, she could double her learning time. I'm ready, Tobirama-sensei. Good. I'll also teach you how to sense and break genjutsu. That's a critical skill in battle. Now, go home and rest. Naruko nodded and headed out, energized by the day's progress. Tobirama watched her leave, thoughtful. Her chakra sustained the seal that allowed him to guide her. He needed to ensure everything was protected, her future depended on it. That's all for now, folks. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay inspired. Warm regards. 6 Path Weeb.